morning and welcome to UPN Focus. I'm your host, Milt Thompson, and today we've got a special treat because we're not only talking to a good friend, we're talking about a significant civic and community leader who's leading not only a local organization with a great deal of pride, entrepreneurial spirit, and movement, but one that's affiliated that has international implications. We're talking about not your old father's thought about what it is, Goodwill Industries of Central Indiana, but the new, better, improved Goodwill Industries of Central Indiana. Do that with my very good friend, the president, Jim McClelland. Jim, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Milt. Good to be here.
Well, the history, growing up, we always heard of Goodwill, and and around my household, those were the things where we would put some clothing items outside, and there would be bins around where we would drop them off. That was that's kind of what we knew, but what I see these days with your advertising campaign, which I have to admit has got to be one of the most creative that I've seen in a long, long time. It tells us about a whole lot more. Tell us about the history of the organization and where we are.
There's so much more to it than meets the eye of the general public, and it's one reason that we really appreciate opportunities to get the word out a bit more. And the whole thing is it's constantly evolving. It's just changing all the time. Goodwill is going to celebrate its 100th anniversary in 1902. These things started in Boston in 2002. It started in Boston 100 years ago. It was started by a minister in the South End slums of Boston who was trying to find some practical way to help unemployed immigrants who were just flooding the city, and most of them couldn't speak English. And he created this idea of going around to some of the wealthier areas and asking people for the goods they no longer wanted, and he put people to work repairing the goods. He sold those goods to the public and took the money and paid wages to the workers. So in effect, he was creating jobs for unemployed people at a time when there was no government safety net. And it required no cash subsidy. Obviously, there's a subsidy of sorts because people did donate the goods. Now, that's how the whole thing got started. Edgar Helms was this man's name. And we hear a lot, those of us in the field hear a lot today about this thing called social entrepreneurship, as if it's something new. Helms was doing it 100 years ago. He was the original social entrepreneur. But the organization, since its inception, has earned most of its income from the sale of products and services. Now, yes, we do accept contributions for various purposes from time to time. Yes, we have contracts with units of government. We get grants from time to time for various purposes. But by and large, most of our income is from the sale of products and services. So that's the kind of culture the organization has. It's one that's more closely attuned to what you would expect just in business than it is what you would expect in a not-for-profit organization. We are a not-for-profit organization. The money that we make is used to provide services that are consistent with our mission. If there's anything left over, why, it's reinvested in the organization rather than distributed to any individual.
So from that one chapter in Boston nearly 100 years ago, led to a proliferation, if you will, of these organizations throughout the country.
That's right. There are now 182 of these independent, and there's a lot of emphasis on that word, independent Goodwill Industries corporations.
Independent to be distinguished from a franchise?
Yeah, and they're not controlled by the national. They are assigned a territory, and they may operate within that territory. Our territory in central Indiana includes about 29 counties. And we're pretty much free to do whatever we see needing to be done that's consistent with our mission within that territory. So there's a lot of variation from one Goodwill to another as you go from one city to another.
Well, tell us about the Central Indiana
Well, this
Goodwill.
was started in 1930. Now, in Boston in 1902, the country was in the midst of a depression. Of course, when Goodwill started in Indianapolis in 1930, we were in the midst of a depression. And it was started, it grew out of the Fletcher Place Methodist Church on the south side. And today it was working in those days with poor families, people who were unemployed, and the members of their families. The organization during World War II and after World War II really developed a pretty strong focus here and also nationally on people with disabilities. There were a lot of people.
That's the stuff that we remember kind of growing up. That was a focused target kind of audience.
That's right, and there were good reasons for that. During World War II, there were jobs available for the able-bodied. it was those with disabilities who were without work. And there were organizations like Goodwill focused on that population. And then you had people coming back from the war with disabilities, and the organization focused on providing them with assistance to get into the workforce and stay there, and to provide jobs for those who were not readily employable elsewhere. And then you get into the 70s, and some of us, some of the Goodwill organizations, started working with people who were termed disadvantaged. People who perhaps had minimal skill levels, minimal education. They needed some help getting into the workforce, and we looked at that and we said, well, you know, we've got some capabilities that we've developed in working with one population that could certainly be useful with other and applicable to other populations as well. In our organization locally, we really took a giant leap forward in that direction in 1990 when we developed here locally a pilot program to assist people who were on welfare in getting into the workforce. And we piloted this for several months. It was tremendously successful. And this was way before the federal welfare reform legislation was passed. We said, well, if that works for that population, there are other people too who could use the same kind of capabilities that we've developed. And then what we saw in the 90s, of course, in Indianapolis was this tightening of the labor market. A very strong economy. We had not a lot of people moving into this part of the country from either other parts of this country or back in the early 90s from other parts of the world. And you couple all these factors and you've got a shortage of workers. So employers are coming to us saying, can't you get us more workers? And we had developed a relationship with a number of companies that would hire people through us, and so we kept trying to help them meet their workforce needs as well. And we said, well, let's reach out more. Let's get more aggressive in trying to find people who could be working but they aren't, and let's try to help them move into the workforce. We started working more with people coming out of prisons, people in work release programs. We got, over the last several years then, heavily involved in working with some of the newly arrived immigrants who are coming into this city, and helping them get into the workforce and working on English language skills. But basically it's, you know, our mission now we define as, pretty broadly, as helping people prepare for, find, and keep jobs and advance in the workplace. And we'll work with virtually anyone who wants our assistance and can benefit from that kind of assistance.
Well, institutions of this size and this kind of magnitude, this might be my assumption, but historically have been fairly inflexible, haven't been able to adapt to change, and perhaps their relevance is continually being tested on an ongoing basis. I don't get that sense with this organization in terms of this institution.
You won't as long as I'm here, I can tell you, because one of the things that we view ourselves as a community resource. We want to use our capabilities to have the maximum impact possible in the communities in which we operate. And we're growth oriented, and we operate pretty aggressively. We're always looking for better ways to do our work. It's the culture of the organization. And,
dynamic, ongoing organization that has some institutional flexibilities inherent in it, and certainly I know that perhaps the structure accommodates that, but I also know that people really make these things happen. I want to talk more about that right after we have this short break. Welcome back to UPN Focus. We've had a very intriguing conversation with Jim McClelland, who is the president of Goodwill Industries of Central Indiana. And we've been talking about this history of the organization and how it really kind of started out as a kind of a social entrepreneurial movement, and organizations that grow and have grown through that kind of time tend to get kind of fixed and stuck with one product, one service, one size kind of fits all. That is not true with Goodwill Industries of Central Indiana. Tell us about the people that comprise its board, its direction, as well as your freedom with flexibility in terms of your leadership of the organization.
We've had a terrific board for a very, very long period of time. And I study organizations, and I look at see what makes some organizations successful and others not so. And one of the things we find in Goodwill, and I think it's true generally, is that if you've got an organization that's really managed to thrive over long periods of time, it's had consistently strong leadership over a long period of time, and it starts at the board level. We've had a great board here. It's one of the elements that attracted me to this organization when I came here a long time ago. And it's a board that knows its role, and it has given us the freedom to try a lot of new things, to be creative. It's given us the freedom to fail. Not everything that we've tried has worked. We learn from all these experiences. You know, we don't bet the whole place on any of them, but we're free to try. We're free to learn from our experiences, and then to use what we've learned to find new ways and better ways to enhance the mission of the organization.
Well, with that superior leadership, and then now some flexibility at staff level with some of your vision, engaging others of the community, tell us now about how you're supported. What are your products and services and service delivery?
The financial backbone for the organization continues to be the retail side, the part that the public is familiar with. We operate 27 retail stores in central Indiana. We opened 2 recently, one in Anderson and one up 151st Street in Hamilton County, right off 31. These stores are tremendously successful. They provide the financial base for the whole organization and give us the flexibility and the freedom to do a lot of the other things that we do. Now, the core of our services are workforce related, assessing individuals, providing them with training. And there's been a growing emphasis, and will continue to be a growing emphasis, on skills training that will enable people to qualify for more than entry-level positions. Right now in this town, it's not hard at all to get a job. Now, if you want to get into something with career potential, you need a skill. And we're doing more to provide opportunities for people who need to continue working, let's say that $6 to $7 an hour job they're in now, to learn a skill that will qualify them for something that, say, might pay them $10 to $12 an hour. So skills training is a strong and a growing emphasis. We're really trying to be able to connect more with what we might term the working poor, people who are working but they're struggling. I think a lot of the people who have come off public assistance in recent years would fall into that category. They need to work, but they want to learn. We work with employers, and we work with education and other education and training organizations. We work with all kinds of organizations to try to structure opportunities for people that they will be able to take advantage of. We don't try to make everybody fit into one type of path.
I've stopped by one of the retail stores not long ago, and it was pretty fascinating to me to see this is not what I had envisioned as kind of a second hand-me-down kind of an operation. So tell us the emergence of that, and what is the process of getting the hard goods, if you will, or soft goods, if you will, and then the transformation of it being retail ready?
It's we take goods, and frankly, we don't do repair work anymore on merchandise. It's not economically feasible to do that. We ask people to give us things that they would consider giving to a friend. It's mostly clothing and small household items rather than large items. And we've tried over the last decade, we've tried to put our stores out where it's convenient for the donors. And we find that if it's convenient for the donors, they can bring merchandise in. It can move directly onto the sales floor at that location. And we find that if we've got good merchandise in a store, people will come. That has really been the key to the growth of the retail side over the last 10 years.
You're talking about growth, however, as an organization that's really charged up, highly motivated, excellent leadership, good vision, a lot of movement. Where is that movement headed to, and how can other people catch on to this Goodwill train?
In what sense?
Well, your philosophy of growth, where you see what had once been for immigrants and a primarily a retail product, now much more into service kind of delivery of training and skills development.
I look at the organization as constantly evolving, and we're trying to constantly elevate the level at which we function. We have more capabilities in our organization now than we've ever had. Is it as much as we're going to need in the future? No way. It's a whole lot more than we had even 5 years ago. We're able to attract talented people who can manage all of this, who can help create new ways of accomplishing and enhancing the mission. They've got great skills. They could work lots of places, but they love being able to apply their abilities in the kind of organization that we have, with the kind of mission that we have. It's very important to them. They get a lot of intangible rewards there. Our approach is going to continue to be trying to help anyone who is not in the workforce but wants to get into the workforce and needs some help doing so. We're going to try to work with those individuals. We don't turn anybody away because they can't pay or because they're not tied in with some government-funded program. We do use those, but we don't exclude people because they're not tied to one. And that's going to continue to be part of our operations as well.
You talked about the number of retail chains. I've been kind of fascinated more so by the size and the scope of service delivery, not just in a geographical way, but in kind of size of an operating budget and operations and being able to keep all of that running. There's got to be an amazing amount of infrastructure that goes into that.
Well, there is. And for example, our organization in Central Indiana employs about 1,200 people right now. You know, that's up over the last 5 years. It's pretty close to double over the last 5 years. We've had a lot of growth. Yeah, it's been my observation that organizations grow, they'll grow pretty gradually until they reach a critical mass, and then if they manage it well, their growth curve accelerates. They got more talent, they've probably got some financial resources by this time, they've had some successes. The more successes you have, the more opportunities you tend to get, and if you've got the resources to be able to seize some of those opportunities, then your growth accelerates. And I've seen that happen with the 2 Goodwill organizations out of those 182 that are larger than we are. We're the 3rd largest out of those 182 in North America.
And to what do you attribute that size, scope, and growth?
We've had great people, and we've had a community that supported us very, very well, and we work very hard to ensure that we continue to merit that kind of support. We really do view ourselves as a community resource. We work hard to merit the confidence that people have in us. They'll include us in various things that are happening because they think that we have something to contribute, and we hope that we always do. And we just keep building on it.
Clearly, this new message is one that you tell so ably and eloquently, and you can do that in this kind of format here to our viewing audience. Yeah. But there's a lot of interesting talk going around about a fascinating advertising campaign that's been implemented. I want to talk about the great creativity and the success of that. We'll do that right after these special words. Welcome back to UPN Focus. We've been talking with the dynamic, irrepressible Jim McClelland, who's the president of Goodwill Industries of Central Indiana. And I tell you, I've gotten a significant eye-opener to what it is I had as a traditional notion of what Goodwill has been, now recognizing that the vistas of opportunity are much more significant, particularly in the realms of service. I got a lot of that information, I must admit, from your assistance in providing me with some of that information, as well as the little knowledge that we get from you. But the kind of percolating around the community is kind of a fascinating ad campaign that goes on that is novel, but clearly memorable. Tell us what went into getting that off the ground.
You know, about 4.5, 5 years ago, I guess it was. You know, we were doing pretty well in the retail side, and he said, "Gee, you know, we're doing pretty well here, and we're not spending a nickel on advertising. I wonder what we could do if we advertised." And so we decided to try it, and we decided to budget enough to give it a fair test. We went out and we hired an advertising agency, Young and Larimore, that did the creative work on this and produced these spots, and they have been incredibly successful. And every once in a while, somebody will say something to me like, "How can you afford to spend all that money on advertising?" I said, "I can't afford not to. if you knew the kind of return that we've gotten, I'm talking about a financial return, it's been a very good investment. It also has given people something, it's changed the image of the organization more than I ever expected it would. And it's something that people talk about. And everybody seems to like them. We've had very, very little, over 4 years that we've been running these now, very, very little negative comment, but an incredible amount of positive comments.
Well, it's just that whole notion about how nonprofits have traditionally operated, about investment, return on investment. Those are not profit vernacular.
Well, you know, that's generally true, I suspect. But in this business, in the thrift store business, nationally, the strongest competition is coming from for-profit operators of thrift stores. Now, we can be passive and we can roll over and just say, woe is me, or we can aggressively get out there and compete and do a better job than they do, and that's our approach. And that's the approach we've been taking for the last 10 years.
So competition model ought to be one that's encouraged and not one that's sustained.
I am a believer in competition. I know competition has made us a better organization.
Well, tell our viewers in our last minute how they can get involved and how they might find out more information.
If you want more information, you can call 264-1313. And our operator will connect you with whatever part of the organization you're interested in learning more about, whether it's the retail side or where you can donate. You can donate at any of our 27 stores. And then we have several other locations where you can also drop off donations. And we do encourage that. That's very, very important to us. If you're interested in services, you can access our services through any of our career development locations, through the INET centers, which we manage for the Indianapolis Private Industry Council. Or you can just call and ask, where's the closest place? We've really tried to make those services more accessible to the people who can benefit from them.
Probably on the web and on the internet and on the high tech.
Sure. And www.goodwill-indy.org.
Take advantage of that opportunity as well as these on this week's calendar.
Here are some events in our area for you to focus on. Come experience the terror of the Asylum Haunted House firsthand, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays through October 29th. The Asylum, located at 1031 Shelby Street, is not your typical movie monster predictable boo haunted house. It's full of patients just dying to meet you. The cost for a treatment at the Asylum is just $6. Next weekend, make plans to attend the Sugar Plum Craft Fair at Lutheran High School in Indianapolis. This is a one-of-a-kind craft fair with a very festive atmosphere. Come enjoy browsing through many unique booths featuring all handmade crafts and gifts. And don't forget to try the homemade turkey salad. If you've been thinking about incorporating something new into your routine that's both exciting and meaningful, becoming a Girl Scout volunteer may just be the thing for you. The Girl Scouts of Hoosier Capital Council need your experience and skills to benefit girls in your area. Please call today to get involved. We want to hear from you. Send your event information 3 weeks in advance to be part of the UPN 23 community calendar.
And I know you'll take special advantage of those calendar opportunities in our community, as well as the opportunities that are presented by Goodwill Industries of Central Indiana. Jim McClelland, my good friend, entrepreneur, thank you so very much for showing up here on UPN Focus. And you show up here this time next week on UPN Focus.